have some questions. Some big questions. Can we hate less and share more love? Can we keep going until we cure every disease? Can we make sure nobody is left behind? Can we find the courage to go further than we have gone? Can we change our ways before it's too late? Can we push our limits beyond the sky? With technology and humanity, we can go further together. Vodacom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Loeries Creative Hour. I'm really excited about our chat today, and it's going to be an amazing one. But first, hi, Suhana. Hi, Simoné. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Hey there. So for anyone who doesn't know Suhana and Simoné, which will probably be very, very few people out there, not too many, I'd like to introduce. Simoné Bosman is the founder and executive creative producer of Loeries Creative Productions, and Suhana Gordhan is the executive creative director at Duke Advertising and also a Loeries board member. So we end up having lots of amazing chats. Thank you to the both of you for joining us, and also thank you to everyone who's joining us right now on Zoom and also on Facebook. Remember, we're live on Facebook, so to everyone across Africa and the Middle East, so good to have you on board. Just a reminder, if you are joining us on Facebook, we cannot, as a group right now, see your questions or comments, but please feel free to still post any questions and comments that you have. I'm assisted by Clocky and Prudence from the Loeries office who will be able to pass that on to us. So feel free to share anything that you may have. Also really, really important to highlight is a massive thank you to Vodacom. Loeries Creative Hour is connected by Vodacom, who are great supporters of creativity and the creative community. And this is just one of the ways they're helping to connect our community and keep us strong and ensure that we're having the important discussions that we need to have to really move our industry forward. So thank you to Vodacom once again. But moving straight into it, Suhana and Simoné, how are you both doing?
Good, thanks. Preetesh, the first thing I want to say is that I'm feeling kind of honored, I think, because I've been asked to speak on a lot of things, but never on sex. So I don't know what my credentials are, but I'm feeling kind of special about this.
I'm not, yeah, okay. Simoné, are you feeling the same? I think Simoné is frozen.
Oh, she's frozen, okay.
Oh. Yeah, by the way, I wore this t-shirt especially for you. I wasn't happy the way it came across, but I wore it because it's the first time I'm wearing it out in public, just so that we can, this is our look for anyone who's looking. This is the amazing work that Suhana and her team have done at Duke for the Loeries campaign this year that's just resonating with so many people. While we wait for Simoné to come back, and she's disappeared just as I said that.
I think she's going to join again. She's just messaged me. Yeah, she's logging in again.
So going back to your statement, I have no idea the credentials, but I think one of the important things, even if we just look at it as just consumers out there and forget being in the industry, I mean, that's where your experience comes. You're inundated with, hi, Simoné. Sorry, we lost you for a second. Can you hear us?
It's my internet is playing games on me.
Don't feel bad. Just before I got on, I saw that dreaded message on my Zoom that says your internet connection is unstable, and I went, no, not now, not before I'm supposed to chat to Simoné and Suhana. So I feel your pain. So no issues. So Suhana was just telling us, you may have missed that. She said she's been asked to speak on a number of different topics. But this is the first time she's having to discuss sex. So we're trying to understand the credentials. I mean, do you feel the same way, Simoné?
I feel exactly the same way, but I'm actually excited about it because it's one of those topics that so few people openly chat about. It's like one of those topics that actually make you want to sweat underneath your armpits and hope that your parents don't hear into the conversation. But it's such a crucial conversation to have, especially out in the.
I agree. And then you've got the other side. You're sweating about the fact that your parents may be watching it. I'm sweating about the fact that, we live in a world where if you say something that may be construed as wrong, somebody's going to go, oh, sorry, Loeries, or Preetesh, or Simoné, or Suhana, what you said was not right. It is one of the challenges when discussing this topic, right, Suhana? I mean, it's always a concern, and I think that's why it's not discussed quite a bit, is when we delve into areas that make us uncomfortable, that discomfort for certain people can result in them then going and criticizing you for even discussing it. Am I right? Oh God, don't tell me. Okay, I see your eyes moving, Simoné. So that means Suhana's internet connection is just blitzed right now.
Oh God, and now was that me? My connection.
That is brilliant. It happens in threes. So mine happened before I joined. It happened now. Yours has happened. So the internet gods have hopefully cast whatever issues they have on us, and there's no more issues after this. So hopefully
maybe the internet is even trying to censor us right now.
Right. The internet's probably very sensitive about this topic. But
I also think that it's a South African issue. I think as South Africans, we're very conservative, and as an industry, I think we're provocative. Sometimes I find myself checking myself to go like, you feel like this because it's natural for creatives in advertising to be provocative, but the general population might not be as provocative as we think. And I think South Africans are quite conservative. So to Simoné's earlier point of like, we don't talk about it enough because we are a little bit kind of nannified about the topic of sex. So.
But the reality is, it's not even just us as South Africans, if you think about it, right? I mean, here's the interesting thing. And Simoné, I know you've done work with lots of different organizations, but I mean, as a Loeries, we look at the whole of Africa and the Middle East. And if I had to like compare Africa, Middle East to other major regions around the world, with maybe the slight exception of Asia, I can't think of another region where this topic seems so taboo other than Africa and the Middle East. Do you find the same thing?
Yes, I mean, like, I think, like, I don't know what it is. I think it's not, I suppose, like, in terms of the African context, we are so cultural and we're so in tune with our cultural side. We come from a very patriarchal, matriarchal background and cultures and stuff. So certain things it's okay for you to talk about, but like sex is one of those things that, in a lot of cultures, you don't openly talk about it. You know what I mean? You also have religion as well, because, the African continent is very religious. So it's not a topic that you could easily come out. The funny thing is, not hilarious, the other day, like yesterday, I saw a post by a particular gentleman on Facebook, and he is very religious, and he decided to go into a little bit of Black Twitter's queen, which is DJ Zinhle. And he spoke about the fact that she's got 2 different baby daddies and how that's taboo within religion and all of that. And what was quite interesting, like it is a sexual conversation because, he kind of like steered the conversation to that. But what was so beautiful to see was the retaliation in terms of like, what people said after that, in terms of the context of, taking such a provocative conversation and saying how things have changed within the African climax, within the African society, with religion as well, that things have changed. And, the poor guy, he had all the balls to come out and talk about that, but then got a bit of a smack of reality to say that things have changed. Like, this is not the same way that things were like a couple of years ago. You can't just box people in, and that, people are diversifying in terms of their views of society and how life should be.
And I mean, Simoné, just to keep on that, and DJ Zinhle lives down the road from me right now. So if I go like that, love her to bits, no one should say anything bad to her. But anyway, but if you actually look at this, and if you look at our society across Africa and the Middle East, and especially if you look at focusing on the African context as a reality, we obviously want the true experience of the African consumer to come out in terms of the creativity that we're looking at. And in truth, if we actually had to look at it, what we're experiencing right now is very unrelated to the past. So how do I put this carefully? if you had to look at the African continent 200, 300, 400 years ago, prior to a colonization period coming through, there was not this repression in terms of the imagery of sexual imagery and the way it's actually placed in art in different areas. And it was actually something that actually came about later. So therefore, when you have a gentleman like this who's actually criticizing this, what they're not realizing is that there's almost a return back to the true root of the culture rather than us trying and do something totally new. Do you think that it's a fair statement?
Suhana, did you want to answer?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting way of looking at it, because you're right. I think that historically we were probably as a continent a lot braver and a lot more open, and we became sort of, our bodies were colonized in some ways and our thinking in many ways. So I think that when you call it a return, it's a return to innocence would be lovely, in the sense that a return to understanding that, I think that media has kind of taken the idea of sex and just given it a bad name. And I think what you're talking about is a healthy understanding of what sex is about, a healthy understanding of your body and being positive about it. And kind of like, when I was thinking about this topic, it's like, there's such a big difference between sex and kind of feeling sexy, or like the idea of liberation and oppression. And so what our roots didn't do is, our roots didn't make us feel oppressed about our bodies. I think time and people and history and all sorts of other things did. And I do think as an industry, we caused that problem, because we messed it up for ourselves. We kind of, as a media industry, we took women's bodies, we took the idea of a body, and we objectified it. So I feel like we have lost our way. And you're right, like in a lot of our cultures, a woman showing her breasts is completely normal. But Instagram hides the nip. So, so that's, I think that statement's very fair, and maybe going back is a good idea.
Well, so here's the thing sorry, yes, Simoné, you gonna go?
I was actually just going to kind of touch on that. There was a post I saw a while back where they took a picture of Suhana Gordhan, and they literally put it next to Kim. And it was quite interesting when we looked at things, and when I saw that, I was like, you know what, that post kind of really rung something true to home to me, and it relates to what we're saying talking about right now, that it was normal for the likes of the Suhana Gordhans back in the early 1800s, etc., to live the way that they did, which is the way that we should be living, which is free and not be objectified. And it's until a different type of gaze comes in and then sees women, African women, in a specific way, that's where things starts changing. And it's quite interesting how the likes of your Kim Kardashians and your Nicki Minaj's, for example, literally spending thousands and thousands of dollars to kind of like go back and try to copy an African body, and actually making something out of it, so it was quite interesting to see that post. And it hurts a little bit, because what we had to go through and what our ancestors went through, and versus how people are monetizing on that right now today, in terms of selling sex to actually make a name, to sell a product and all of that. It kind of hurts, but you're also understanding that, is it more of a celebration of our bodies and who we are? Are they changing the tide in terms of taking that type of perception of, a woman's body, from objectifying it to celebratory? So it kind of like one ends up being a little bit conflicted when you start thinking about things in that perspective.
I completely agree. And maybe therefore, Suhana, you're going to get the hard question right now. I mean, are we as an industry just purely using sex to just sell products? Is that our key goal? Are we really just still in this mindset of objectifying women in the communication that we're creating, so that we can try and move products off shelves or whatever else, or cars or alcohol or any of that stuff?
So I definitely think there was a time in advertising where we did that. And I mean, I always reveal my age, but I do think I was in the industry at the time when we were making ads about women draped over cars and women's faces being covered by car magazines and stupid things like that. But So I don't think we're doing that anymore, not because we've evolved. I think we're too damn scared right now because we'll be nailed by, by society for making ads that use sex to sell. So I don't think we're doing it anymore, but I don't think we're doing anything to counter the damage we have done as an industry in the past. So South Africa specifically, I think I was saying to Simoné earlier, I think we're light years behind maybe the Europes, the Australias and the Americas of the world, because we're not telling stories that are better. We aren't talking about sex as liberating or empowering, or we aren't talking enough about body positivity. We aren't representing different types of sexual relationships. We are basically just steering away from the topic. And I was saying to Sim, I was even trying to just convince a client to do an ad with a couple kissing, let alone a lesbian couple kissing, is a challenge. So as an industry, we might not be doing the overt negative damage of, showing a woman objectified. There are one or two examples that still exist, but I think we're doing worse by not even trying to tell better stories. We're just kind of leaving it alone because it's too dangerous a territory to play in. You're on mute, Preetesh.
Oh no, the basic one-on-one error. Sorry, everyone. so we did a bit of research as the Loeries as well, and we had a look at some of the communication that's coming out of the region overall. And what was surprising was the number of examples that we found of women being used as props in communication itself. So you'd have the communication where you'd have both men and women on screen, but actually when you delve into it, what you were actually seeing, and categories such as motor vehicles, categories such as restaurants, alcohol, where women were still shown on screen, but not given enough speaking time, because again, they were being used as props and being objectified. So it is still happening, sadly enough, across the region, and we are picking up those examples of that. Simoné, now, if that's the reality and what we're actually seeing right now, how do we, as members of the creative community, and as Suhana has highlighted, having those challenges and those tough chats with brands out there to make these kind of changes, what is our responsibility? How can we actually go out there and show that we're putting the right imagery out there that's really transformative and making a difference in society?
I think as an industry, we just need to be a little bit more bold. I think that the blessing that is the digital social media platforms, is that it doesn't have the regulatory do's and don'ts that is being administered by like your BCCSA's example, where some person can write in and say, please take that TV commercial off. So what is quite nice about that is that we are able to produce the content that can kind of like slowly start to change that tide and the perception of objectifying women and using women as props to use sex to sell a certain product. For example, like we did an ad 2 years ago, 2 years ago, because I forget, last year was COVID year, where we actually had a client who sells lingerie. Her name is Gugu. And it was quite interesting that for the first time, I was able to produce a piece of content that could live on the net quite unashamedly, and also celebrate women, and just, have an ad where women can just freely be themselves. We only see them in lingerie, and different types of women, not your typical, can only have a size 6 model and a model looking woman. We had different types of women representing, coming through. We had a fuller figure woman that came through as well in the ad, as well as, your typical size 4, size 34s, and etc. So, and different races, cultures, etc. So I think that we just need to be a little bit more bold and utilize platforms that enable us to showcase the work that we want to showcase, because what we do find is that a lot of creatives do find inspiration from what is out there on the internet, especially. And that also would kind of like educate and will change our perception in terms of like what is out there, what is real, what is authentic, and what will speak to the consumers in the most believable way.
And
Can
so
I add that,
oh, sorry, Suhana, you go ahead.
I think that's spot on, is the ability to be more bold, and because I for the desire to be bold as creatives in the industry. But I also think that if we have to go here, but we must go deeper into the idea of making that great work means we have to shift the male gaze, means we have to get more women into our studios and into the decision-making seats in the boardrooms, because the danger of not getting that right means we have the blind spots, and we will continue to tell stories in a kind of harmful way, or not even harmful. We just won't tell the stories from the other perspective. So Simoné, being a person who created an ad for luxury, knows what lingerie, luxury lingerie, it's a great product, will understand that. And Gugu herself, as a businesswoman, she found a way to also talk to women of color and to create lingerie that speaks to those women. So I think that there's all sorts of consciousness that happen in that process. Having the right people in the room, having the right marketer and the right products, you can start to shift that male gaze.
Amazing. And I think that's so true, because with Google Intimates, if you look at any of the creative that's actually done, that's not an example truly of sex selling, is it? It truly is just that there's a product that truly can add value to someone's life. And it's not about saying, hey, like, we're using sex to purely sell this. Would that say that's a fair assumption, Simoné?
Yeah, it is a fair assumption. And I think, but you must also understand that, like, whenever you saw a lingerie ad, it was the woman was objectified. She was always seen as this sexy person. And you look at it and you're like, you as a man, I mean, I'm not a man, but I mean, I would imagine if a man looks at it and be like, ooh, there is, Claudia, one of these models that will just be looking so beautiful. She's perfect and she's sexy, and ooh, it'll make him feel a certain way. But as a woman, I would look at the women in lingerie and feel like, oh my gosh, like, will I be able to get into this panties? Will I feel sexy enough and all of that stuff? So like, even though the lingerie is for me, I would also feel a certain way. So, and often it's the case when you start seeing commercials like that, the men would possibly buy it for the women probably buy it for themselves to feel sexy, feels in a certain type of way. So you'll use something that will make someone's desires come to life. You know what I mean? Like, to use sex is to use sex to sell a product is to kind of like speak to a certain desire of the consumer that you want to kind of like, sensationalize at the end of the day. So when you start seeing the tide changing, where you change that spin, and like Suhana was saying, is that you change the perspective of the male gaze talking to that specific desire. We using the likes of the Googles, for example, they would rather use that and flip it and say, no, it's not a desire, it's a celebration. It's looking at our bodies, not for sex particularly, but we're looking at a product that will make a female feel comfortable and very, very comfortable within her skin, and to celebrate who she is as a woman. So I think that your assumption is quite fair and it's quite strong. And it's just trying to kind of find a way to change that tide in terms of the male gaze perception.
And I think for viewers, let me read Veer's comment, and then we're going to speak about this male gaze perception. So Veer says, Veer Benza says, we have seen a lot more women being body positive. I mean, the likes of Lizzo came into the music industry and changed the game. Contrary to that, we've also seen so much backlash in women being more sexy, especially plus-sized women. How do we as advertisers shift that kind of backlash, because women are becoming more sexy in their own body, in their bodies, but at the same time, there is so much backlash from society if you are a certain woman wearing lingerie, etc. I believe we are storytellers and influencers when it comes to how people think or react. That's a good point. Who'd like to take it? I'll leave it to the both of you. Jump in, go for it.
So I think that the lady answered the question herself in the power of storytelling to shift the narrative. And I think that someone like Lizzo, I'm such a huge fan, I follow her, and I think she's just, the way to shift it is to just do despite. And I think that that's the cue that the industry should take, as in an advertising industry, is the more you normalize something, the more you put it out there for everybody to see as, as a thing that just happens in normal day. Larger women wear lingerie, larger women have sex, women of color have sex, Hindu women have sex, whatever it is. If you start to shift perception by just normalizing, it's a long game, but it will change, because somewhere along we started that negative journey by deciding that a car must be sold by a sexy woman, and everyone bought into that. So if we can do that on the negative side, we can do it on the positive as well. And I think the people you're fighting, like the guy you mentioned that opened up to Black Twitter and kind of revealed himself, that's okay, because I think the more people have debate, the more they argue, the more you move forward instead of trying to suppress. So yeah, I think telling the stories is the way forward, and being brave about it and being authentic about it. Because it's also, I'm not a fan of brands that just do it because it's the time and tide and kind of fashionable. I think that that's disingenuous.
So here comes a challenge, and maybe Simoné, just handing the baton over to you. I mean, so Suhana also highlighted, I think earlier, you know, sometimes when we chat with brands, and I've come from that side, you chat to brands and you go, you need to be brave, you need to be bold, because this is the reality of where society is today and what you need to reflect. And brands go, nope, I don't think so. I'm going to go back to the vanilla safe option because I feel that's a place that my brand will not get any backlash in. How do we now start convincing? And if you're a personality, if you're a media personality, it's a lot easier to do so because you are your own brand. But how do you convince a brand manager, marketing director to basically be able to go down this journey of embracing where society is moving, where women are moving through in terms of the thinking, in terms of body positivity, so that that's better reflected in the communication we put out there?
It's actually an easier one. I've got an example to share. So also again, 2 years back for Telkom, we did the Munati big campaign. And one of the things that we looked at, obviously it's a montage of different characters doing different things. And we just felt, myself and the director, Tumelo, like we just felt that we were looking around the boardroom, we looked at the storyboards, we looked at the characters that we were about to cast. And the one thing I was like, dude, you know what? This will be a perfect opportunity to just have a female lead who is voluptuous as a lead character, not throughout the commercial, but in one scene. Let her be the star. Let her take the reins, and let the light be on her. And let us just celebrate her. Let's just see her just being there in the moment. And we thought that, honestly, we thought that we were not going to get it sold because we're like, ish, we don't want a client to think that we're going to be getting backlash and stuff. But quite interesting enough, when we presented it, we literally said, guys, just look around the room. We have to, like, we're different females with different sizes. Why can't we see ourselves on TV? We have to show ourselves on TV. We have to see ourselves, represented, because we are all buying your product. It's airtime, it's this, it's that. And like, not just a size 32 or size 8 or 6 person is buying airtime. Everybody's buying airtime. All races and sizes, etc. Cultures are buying your product. And it was such an easy, it wasn't even a debate. The client just said, you know what, let's do it. And it was just that moment where we just said, look around the boardroom, look within your families. Why would you want to discriminate and not allow someone to see themselves who is also buying your product? So I think that, from the South African context and the African context, we want to see more of ourselves. And that's the beauty of where we are right now in terms of the creators that we have as well, who are pushing those boundaries a little by little. Yes, you've got clients who are very conservative and we're like, no, but this is our LSM and our target market and all of that. But in there needs to be a little bit of a realistic push, because the reality, like the AMA 2000s, for example, they will watch an ad and go straight onto Black Twitter and comment about it. I think that Black Twitter, for example, is a lot more stronger than Hello Peter, which is like you can write a whole paragraph. But like if something goes on Black Twitter and if it takes 10 people to not like something for the rest of everybody else to say, hey, there's something. And it's not about not liking something, it's to highlight a certain product problem or an issue that they're seeing that needs to be attended to. So yeah, so I think that we just have to kind of like bring it a little bit home. Brand managers are people too, clients are people too. They've got families too, and they have to see themselves and their families within the products that they sell.
Yeah, and I think, what you're saying is so right, because as people, we tend to trust other people who are just like us a lot more than we would necessarily, even what some of the brands are saying or what we're seeing in communication out there. So therefore, when you're listening to somebody on Twitter, if you're listening to somebody on any other social media platform and they're saying, this troubles me, I find there's an issue with this, an individual is more likely to apply their mind to the issue that that person's experiencing to see if they have the same thing. So maybe one of the things we should do is, let's have a look at an ad. Doug Place would probably shoot me for this, but this is way before his time. But let's have a look at this ad. And this is a 13-year-old ad from 2008. And just have a look at where that discussion in terms of the male gaze and trying to sell products and the challenges that we are likely to experience. So let me do this.
I know, I'm so spoiled. It is you. Hang on a sec. Excuse me. Hi, hi. Hi. Where's my chips? They're on your plate. No, they're not. Where? There they are. The bigger, fuller, bouncier, double-breasted burger from Nando's.
I mean, I look at that ad and go, if we had to analyze it in terms of representation, and we looked at some of the key KPIs that we have, which is speaking time and screen time, it would be 100% screen time for women, 100% speaking time for women, because even the voiceover was a woman. But in truth, there's a lot of issues with that type of communication. And if anyone wants to wade into it, or should I just stick with it? If anyone doesn't want to comment, it's fine. But I mean, would that type of ad be made today?
Nope. I mean, I have to say I was at the agency when that ad was made. It was back.
I did not know that. Yeah. Whoops. Okay.
So no, but I was just going to say that I don't think that ad would be made today. But and it comes to my next point, which is that I do think that entertainment, advertising, we all follow the zeitgeist of the time, and we kind of, how we make decisions directly correlates to what's happening around us in society. The wave of as much as I like to think we lead things, sometimes we also just play into what's happening in the world around us. So that happened at a time when it was okay to make fun of women who had breast augmentation or were naturally larger breasted. So I think that we do play into what's happening, and now when you look at that ad, you go, oh, it actually played into a more harmful stereotype that women who are blonde, women who have larger breasts are actually a bit, not that smart, and that's not right. I think that there's nothing wrong with having big breasts, but what the ad did is it played on that stereotype, which is probably not great. But I think that, I think we do things based on what the zeitgeist is in the moment.
So, Simoné, anything to add in terms of that ad, or in terms of ads in that type of genre?
No, I agree with Sue. I think that, looking at this ad now, I think probably in 2008, if somebody watched it, they'll be like, that's funny at the time. It may not have been as funny, but for a bunch of guys that have watched it, it would have been hilarious for them, right? Today, something like that would have been taken off TV. Everybody would have literally canceled a client for something like that. And I think that that's a perfect example of going back into who was in the room making those decisions. There were probably more men than there were women, and if there was a woman, did she have a voice? Did she actually have a strong foot or ground to stand on? Did they actually consider when she said, no, guys, this is offensive? And then somebody probably said the typical thing, you're overthinking it, we're playing into a stereotype. It's nothing offensive. Everybody, we're playing on the joke that blonde women are dumb, So it's one of those things where it's a perfect example that also speaks to transformation in terms of how that we essentially do need those women in the rooms to be able to counter with a lot of vigor to say, no, we can't be, producing content like this. It takes us backwards in a society as women, and it doesn't take us forward. Highly offensive ad today watching it, but it might have been okay back then in 2008.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Suhana, so is there a right way today in 2021 to use sex or sexual innuendo in any way in advertising? And I know it's a loaded question because, we may look at something today and go, it's perfectly fine. And 5 years down the line, people are going to go, that was terrible and I can't believe it's made. But at this moment in time, is there a way to actually use it, considering that it is a natural human experience, same as hunger, same as anything else, and should it be used in advertising?
Yeah, I mean, you asked me 3 questions in one. That's not fair, but okay, I'll try to answer all. I think that we're already suffering as an industry from a sanitization of how we communicate, and I'm kind of worried about the words right and wrong, because it does put such heavy value judgment on things, and I almost feel like we were talking about this the other day on a chat with some creative leaders, and we're saying that maybe the problem with us is we're trying to censor ourselves before we even make the work. Like, can we just allow ourselves to do what we do, be provocative? I mean, I still think in that time that ad was loved, because it is a little bit silly and fun, the boobs ad. But can we allow ourselves to do what we do, but then after we've created, to go, now let's put a sense check on this. Is this harmful? Is this going to do good? Is this going to be something that gets people talking? Because I am worried about becoming so, I mean, this is what we suffer with every day. We're becoming so scared of making work and getting cancelled. But to answer your second question around, is sex, should sex have a place in advertising? Absolutely. I think that today Simoné and I were talking about so many great examples of how sex was used in a really positive way. I think the only time you shouldn't be doing it is if, think about a daughter, think about a son, or anybody that will be harmfully affected by it, or if it does no good. A lot of the time brands just do it to get attention. I mean, it doesn't actually convince you to buy the product. So sex used well and used in a way that helps, makes good business sense. Yes, why not? I don't think there's a taboo on having no sex at all in ads. It would be a very dull place to be.
Now, Vivek has another comment about backlash, and says also backlash now is no longer just backlash. It has led to cancel culture for most brands. How will brands navigate that? As you just said, Suhana, brands need to change the narrative and perspective of how women are perceived, because this can play both ways. Either you change the game or you lose revenue and relevance. But I also guess that is inevitable. So I guess the key question is, how do you actually navigate the space we're in right now? Maybe Simoné, just to pass this on to you. How do we navigate the space to ensure that we still be able to be creative and innovative without being afraid of being cancelled because of something that we've put out there?
I think a piece of work that I'd like to share that kind of would answer a lot more better. But I think that it's tied in with the ad that you just showed us now from Nando's, that you kind of like, you change the way that this typical stereotype is used to portray people and to sexual on that. So let me play you this ad.
Please, yeah.
Because I think it will say it. Let me do this. This is like one of my favorite ads right now. So just do this. I don't know if you can see, stop sharing quickly. Let me just share the actual screen.
Get your booty to the pole, 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 yeah.
Did we get your attention? Good. So, you really not gonna vote? You know it's more than just the president on the ballot, right? Check it. A district attorney decides who to prosecute, including whether or not to go after dirty cops. Do you know who elects the DA? We do, but you don't want to vote. Can't make it rain if you locked up on some bullshit. Want trades and coding taught in their schools? Then vote for the school boards that will prepare us for the job market. Want to end cash bail? Well, then vote for the sheriffs and county officials that feel the same way you do. But you talking about, oh, they gonna pick who they gonna pick, shawty. Ferguson just elected their first Black mayor. You know how that happened? Clear Black lives don't matter to some of our current elected officials. If they matter to you, then don't let other people decide who's going to run your community. Get your booty to the poll. Get your booty to the poll. Get your booty to the poll.
Get your vote. Stretch.
For information on how and where to vote, as well as resources to find out who's running where you live, go to getyourbootytothepoll.com.
To the poll, get your booty to the poll, get your booty.
So great
I hope
messaging.
I didn't lag any.
Zoom always has a little bit of lag. That's perfect. I'm never even sure if it's on my side because the internet is a bit crazy today. So overall, great messaging. But can we agree that if that piece of communication, which is obviously designed for the States, was broadcast anywhere in Africa, Middle East, I mean, even if we look at it, we're all sitting in South Africa right now. If it was broadcast in South Africa, the ARB would have 100 complaints before the end of the day.
Sorry, I think I also had a bad lag.
No, yeah, I'd say if that particular piece of communication, which has such a valuable message, and obviously the veneer seems to be based on a sexual connotation, whatever else maybe, but if that kind of message, which is about, again, voting and getting people to vote based on real issues that are impacting society right now, was broadcast, if a similar ad was done in South Africa, the ARB would probably have about 100 complaints before the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it comes back to what I was saying earlier on about us as a context in South Africa. I think we're far more conservative than we could be. I think that we, and I understand that in some countries, there's a predominance of a religion that doesn't allow, a body to be portrayed in that way. So that is something that has to be respected. But I mean, I also love that ad so much because it does more than just, convince people to vote in a very compelling way. It dispels a myth. It kind of takes the category of pole dancing and upends it. And I mean, personally, I was applauding because I have this a personal story about pole dancing. I did one semester of it, and I remember how much judgment I faced just by saying that I was trying it out. And I remember people in my own close circles are like, "What?" And yet, if you look at it as a dance form, it's absolutely amazing how much strength. And who's a director of a company and an accomplished pole dancer. So I just think that, yes, it's going to be an ad that would cause people to get upset, and it's frustrating. And yes, in some cultures, you wouldn't be able to get away with it. But what I admire so much about it is that it is a piece that spoke about something so important, which is the right to vote and the importance of sharing your voice. And so sometimes we have to, I think Suhail said it on the call in your last creative hour, is that sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to be brave as a brand. And kind of people are angry for a little while and then they move on. So sometimes you need to just go on that journey, I think.
So maybe having a look at the messaging of the ad we saw, and a really old campaign, but I mean, Peter's campaign that they did, and we can go through some of the examples that Peter actually had about, rather going naked than wearing fur, I mean, would you say this campaign is in a similar type of vein as the one that we've actually watched?
I would say yes. I mean, let's just go through some more.
So obviously this was a very famous campaign that they had where they got a number of celebrities to go, I'd rather go naked than wear fur or wear wool. And the whole idea was to, animal rights and protecting animals out there as well. But I mean, it's a very similar kind of mindset. I mean, the insight is very similar in terms of being able to use sex in a way that actually changes perception, but it's not necessarily, again, only one guy, but at least there's one guy in it.
I wanted to see, it's not just women that wear fur or wool,
and not just the typical body shape. That's the one thing. And
you're right. This is a typical celebrity body shape, except for the one guy.
It's airbrush, it's work. I mean, it's kind of I'm on the fence on this one because, yes, I understand the context of it, but, does it sexualize to a degree? Yes. Does it get the messaging across? Yes, it does. But could they have diversified it, definitely they could have, you know, just having one guy there, it's like
So
now
is that the key lesson? I mean, for anyone who's watching this at some point and going, okay, I've got a campaign and I may want to look at being able to be a bit brave and be a bit creative. Is that the reality of the message? What you should be looking at is how do you ensure that you're actually diversifying the images that you're using, showing positive body images and using a range of different people instead of necessarily going for anything that can be perceived as highly sexualized content?
I think you have to interrogate whether you're fighting one sensational thing with another sensational thing, because that's just kind of a fad response or like a quick way to solve something. I think if you, like, my biggest criticism of brands is, like I said earlier, when you're not doing something that's true to what your brand personality and core of your personality is, it stands out. So if you're using sex to sell your brand, you're maybe not thinking of what the consumer feels, or what, because the consumers, you're a human. Is this about you as a brand, or is this about the people that buy into your brand? So I think there are ways to look at it, and it's not that hard to go like, do you think this is going to be harmful? Do you think that this is going to celebrate? Is this about uplifting? Is it about being edgy but still being positive? Is it about being entertaining but still being authentic and true to the brand? I think there's so many good examples of ways of doing that. I mean, Simoné's got an example of an ad that used, literally in the ad, images of penis and vagina, and it's actually doing a really positive story around a topic that isn't spoken about, which is consent. So like I said, I don't think it's impossible to do it. I think it comes back to interrogating, are you doing it for the right reasons, and how are you telling that story?
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Yes.
consent, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And as always, trigger warning, if anyone's uncomfortable, this is the right time to close your eyes. Just to be safe, just in case anyone's uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, but a lot of people grew up watching Bold and the Beautiful and saw Brooke Logan.
I haven't seen this ad, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah.
There you go.
Anything you want. Grab him by the pussy. I can do anything. When this is the world we live in, how do you explain sexual consent to college kids? A group just learning about consent. You keep it simple. If it's not yes, it's no. And you speak to them in their favorite format, short videos.
Hey,
Videos empower young women to say no.
mm-mm.
And how to listen.
Whoa.
Sorry. I just thought.
Yeah.
Our content let genitals explain how simple consent can be. And the response was incredible. With no paid media, we grabbed 14 million YouTube views and hundreds of millions of impressions in 231 countries. Best of all, Project Consent made sexual consent simple enough for everyone to understand. Well, almost everyone.
Wow, I have not seen this. That is amazing. Love it, love it, love it. That is a really, really great campaign.
Yeah, I also love it. I mean, and just like looking at the opening of that video, speaking, like, you have people like Trump who blatantly just kind of, lead the messaging in the wrong way. And so I think we have a lot to counter. And I think that that's a great example of brand being brave enough to do it and do it in a way that's actually quite open and honest. And as you know, Simoné was talking about AMA 2000, and a lot of our brands demand that we speak to Gen Zs, and Gen Zs have the power, but they're the great generation. I think they're the most honest generation, because they're demanding more of us as society, more of us as brands. They want brands that stand for something. So that's quite a nice message to marketers to go, if you really want to be, brave and true, then you've got to pay a little more attention to what the kids are saying.
So the key lesson here is, obviously, in anything that you do, is I'm guessing, don't stay away from advertising that face is reality and sex is a part of reality. So if you need to use it, but do it with a high degree of responsibility and awareness, by ensuring that that what you're doing is not really being done purely for the male gaze, but truly from a point of education. So, Simoné, would that be right, or is there anything else you think it's important to add? We've lost Simoné again. This network has not been our friend today. This network.
I think she's back.
But Suhana, I mean, maybe you want to tackle that. I mean, is there anything else we need to think about? So obviously, don't stay away from using it, because there's a natural, it's a natural human experience, and there may be value in doing it, especially in that communication about consent and teaching consent, but also that sense of responsibility that needs to come into it to ensure that it's not necessarily just done purely for the male gaze. Is there anything else that's missing out from that?
Yeah, and I think we may have mentioned it, is to just make sure we have diversity in the room when we're making those decisions on the side of the agency and on the side of even up to the end of the production, where when you're producing the ad, when you're shooting it, if you're making an ad with women in it, make sure there's women in your crew. So I think it's a lot of layering of making sure that we're doing right for brands and right for people, but not doing it to the point where you kind of destroy all creativity and destroy, the process. So yeah, I would say a bit of everything, like not just putting a gauntlet on no sex, and we will not touch this subject, we will not touch that subject. So yeah, have the ability to entertain.
Simoné, from your side, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Like, just for anyone who's going to watch this, there's always great to have that advice in terms of what are some of the things they should be considering. At some point, everyone's going to be sitting with a campaign that's going to have some degree of maybe sexual content in it, but how can we do so and ensure that it's done in a responsible manner? And we've already looked at it in terms of ensuring that we have women in the team and having that representativity in it. Anything else that you're thinking from your side that we're missing out?
Yeah, I think we just need to be less terrified and more bold in what we do, creatively, because I always say to people, like, I've got one job where I can watch, like when I watch TV and when there's a commercial, I can see my work on TV. An accountant's work is never, on such a big spectrum. So I always say that let's be bold, let's sense check as well. Let's be cognizant that our work is more reachable than it was before. It's not like one person in the neighborhood has the TV and everybody else comes and views the work. Every person has access to everybody's work these days, and your work actually touches a lot of people's lives. So yeah, do something that will represent society, culture, be respectful as well, but also don't be afraid to just speak your societal truth, and be bold.
Amazing. And I think that's really, really good advice. The other important work that you're both doing before we end that I think is so important to highlight is amazing work that you both have been doing for many, many years on Open Chair and ensuring that many young women in the industry have a platform to be able to have access to some of the leaders in our industry who are doing great work. So maybe tell us about how Open Chair fits in this, or maybe just Open Chair in general for anyone who's missed out on that. Suhana, do you want to start first, and then Simoné, maybe some insights as well?
Yeah, I think that Open Chair was started because I felt that growing up in the industry, I had no female leaders that I could access or talk to. I knew of their existence, but there were so few and they were so far away. And it was a time when, you couldn't just pick up the phone and say, hey, I would like a 5 minutes with you. I think it was just a different time in the industry. So this was about creating FaceTime access to women leaders and male leaders as well, but more importantly, to give younger women the opportunity to speak and to ask questions and to discuss things that are concerning them or relevant to them. And it fits into this in the sense that it's about having, creating more confidence to open up, to speak, to have a voice, to let your voice be heard in a room. And I've often seen that, like, I've experienced that with sometimes a young female in the room will be the one to put us all in check and to say, hey, this idea might not be that great because of XYZ. So for me, that's one of the reasons I think OpenShare is great, is it just creates space and shines a spotlight on some of the young talent we have that's often just ignored.
Yeah, and
Great.
also
Yeah. And I'm on mute, the internet. There we go. Simoné,
to have an
listen.
opinion that they
Oh, we've got you back.
Oh,
We've
So
got
my
you
internet-
back. I think we've got you back. So that should be perfect.
Okay, so just to say that, you know, it's a platform for young creative women to feel like it's okay for them to be themselves, for them to have a voice, for them to be heard, for them to have a mentor that they can also just connect with as well, so that they don't feel alone. Like, even especially like, you know, the industry is changing, it's transforming, but when you see a woman lead, or you have access to a woman lead within the organization, or even outside of the organization within the industry, it makes it a little bit better for you to be able to, you know, open up your mouth and express your opinions, and without any restrictions, or to feel like you're being suppressed in any way. So OpenShare is that platform that women can come out and be themselves creatively without restriction.
Amazing. Thank you so much to the both of you for sharing your insights today. Also, for anyone who's interested in finding out more about OpenShare, how's the best way that anyone can find out more about it?
They can drop us an email, I guess, or we quite like open. There's actually an OpenShare account on Instagram. Maybe that's probably the best way. Is a DM there. Hey, Simoné. Yeah,
so it's Instagram, OpenShare, and then we also have an email address, OpenShare Loeries, and can email us as well. We will be hosting some more events as well. Due to COVID, we couldn't have our live events, but we've also seen that the uptake on Zoom and digital virtual platforms has made it possible for us to connect and to a wider audience as well. So watch this space.
Amazing. I want to thank both of you for your time today and for sharing all of those amazing insights. Just a reminder for anyone who's missed it, we have Simoné Bosman, who's the founder and executive creative producer at Osu Creative Productions, and Suhana Gordhan, who's the executive creative director at Duke Advertising. Thank you to the both of you for your advice and insights, and hopefully everyone else will be able to tackle this really uncomfortable sometimes topic of dealing with sex in advertising and anything that you may encounter in a much better and more productive way. So thank you so much, Suhana. Thank you, Simoné, and have an amazing day further.
Thank you, Preetesh. Thanks for having us.
And to everyone who joined, thank you so much. And just again, a big thank you to our sponsors, Vodacom, who connect the Loeries Creative Hour and ensure that we can connect with every single one of you. Thanks to everyone, and tune in next week. Looking forward to chatting then. Take care. Cheers, Suhana. Cheers, Simoné. And bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
I have some questions. Some big questions. Can we hate less and share more love? Can we keep going until we cure every disease? Can we make sure nobody is left behind? Can we find the courage to go further than we have gone? Can we change our ways before it's too late? Can we push our limits beyond the sky? With technology and humanity, we can go further together. Vodacom.